Hey, what's up, you guys? Bloody Jacob here to bring my weekly review of the Vampire Diaries on the CW. This week we've seen Season 8, Episode 3, which is called You Decided That I Was Worth Saving. And, of course, the title being another tie back to a line or a quote from Season 1 of the show. I still really like that they're doing that. And it also applies to the main point of this episode and the choice that Bonnie sort of has to make by the end of it. I really like this episode. It's probably my favorite episode of the season so far, actually, out of the first three we've gotten anyway. Going into this episode, I was still in the mindset that I'm just going to be trudging along for the rest of the season. You know, I just want to get to the last couple of episodes, or the last episode or so you're going to see what's going to happen at the end, you know, for the final season. I still feel like we're all kind of playing the waiting game right now. We're all just sort of waiting for Elena to wake up somehow and, just to see how everything concludes. But at the same time, this is turning into a pretty good season so far. I'm enjoying it more than I did the beginning of Season 7 at this point in the season anyway, which is good. You know, the final season should be a bit better. I am legitimately liking how it's going so far, despite me just impatiently wanting to see how it's going to end. And I really like this episode. We started with Sybil. Of course, she's just continuing to pluck any mental refuge or any source of like good or humanity that's still left in Damon. We get flashes of when Elena almost drowned along with her parents when they went off the bridge, and Sybil basically has that replayed in Damon's head to basically just completely take Elena out of his mind, as far as we know anyway. And it was kind of weird that Sybil went with this particular thing, because Stefan was the one who interfered with Elena there. You know, he was the one who got Elena out of the car and saved her. So it's more of Stefan's particular moment here, I think, but still I get what they're going for, what she was going for, with Damon sort of just like letting Elena go, letting her die, and just having her like erased from his mind, so I got it. But, Sybil, that's for you, you know, fucking with our Delana memories, you know, our Delana, you know, shit, you know, that's our Delana shit, okay? But, you know, I still think Elena will show up in the final episode, and that might be what finally pulls Damon back. We'll see. But we'll talk more about where Damon's going to go in the long run at the end of the episode. We had kind of a funny scene. Of course, Caroline wakes up in Stefan's bed, and she's like, she leans over to look at Stefan, and Bonnie's laying next to her. So I actually thought that was pretty funny. Not because of Caroline. I don't like Caroline, but I thought Bonnie doing that was, pretty fun. Of course, Bonnie's trying to be very supportive of Caroline, happy for her after hearing about her engagement to Stefan. And Stefan, he's trying to feel out Rick, after it all, of course, because he doesn't want to be, like, on bad terms with Rick, and Rick says it's fine, but, it's kind of implied there's, like, some kind of underlying jealousy he still has or something like that. But I think Rick has actually moved on. He's let go of it. And we get a good scene between Rick and Stefan at the end of the episode that sort of puts that even more into the front. But we'll talk about that when the time comes later in this review. And when Bonnie and Caroline are starting to pick out wedding dresses, because, Caroline, she's going to want to go through about 100 or 1,000 of them or so before she picks the one she really wants. Damon attacks Bonnie and Caroline, and of course with that he also had his attachment to Bonnie plucked out, which Sybil wasn't exactly aware of beforehand, and she sensed that he had held back in that encounter or that confrontation for some reason when trying to take her out right then and there. And she looks more into why Damon does actually care about Bonnie, and of course, she sees all the hatred that was between them in the earlier seasons, or the first few seasons. Back when Bonnie said everything is his fault, Elena, and things like that, and just all the, yelling and the tears and stuff like that. But then you get to, when they started spending time together on the other side, and Sybil found that to be pretty interesting. And that ties into when Sybil actually goes to visit Caroline and Bonnie later, and Sybil sort of is curious about Damon and Bonnie's relationship, and she gets a sense that they probably hooked up at some point, you know, like all that time trapped on the other side, they would have had to, right, you know, to do something else other than like the mind-numbing quiet, right? Yeah, but they never did. It's you know, platonic or whatever. But you know, I still thought they kind of played on some of the fans' feelings there. You know, like, oh, they're so close and they did all this and that together, but they never, you know, went for it. And you know my feelings on that if you watch my reviews of last season. Yeah, I understand why it wouldn't be right for Damon and Bonnie to be together, you know, the whole Elena thing. And the thing is, though, that Bonnie's like the only other character Damon has any sort of chemistry with like that. So it's kind of like a, you know, double-edged sword. But I thought Enzo and Bonnie has worked, so I'm kind of past it. I sort of like how the writers, or Kevin Williamson and Julia Plec here, addressed it a little bit. But Sybil still seems pretty shocked, or at least intrigued by their devotion to each other, despite it not being like sexual or romantic or anything like that. And Bonnie sort of points out Sybil probably has some like jealousy or like you know, frustration that someone else has inspired that much devotion besides her, and she didn't have to manipulate him to do it. So I like that. And of course, meanwhile, you had Caroline knock on Damon a little bit, saying she doesn't want him at their wedding either way, whether he's saved or not. Caroline's just a really petty little bitch, isn't she? Caroline's always had this grudge against Damon, and yeah, at times Damon has definitely deserved it. But everything, it's like Caroline always ignores like all the good Damon's ever done. It's like she refuses to see what Bonnie sees in him, or like acknowledge what Elena might have seen in him that got her so, you know, in love with him. But Caroline still thinks he's just like this jerk either way. Oh yeah, tunnel vision, great. Anyway, oh, let's see. Well, we also find out that Sybil is going to be making Damon and Enzo fight, so Bonnie's kind of put in the spot to choose one over the other. You know, we have Alaric sort of looking more into you know, Sybil and the siren and stuff like that, and the artifact they had found, the fork-like object, and he finds out that's sort of like a tuning fork, and it's kind of connected to perhaps Sybil's you know, abilities with her singing and stuff like that. So I like that. And of course, as Sybil is driving along with Bonnie and Caroline, Bonnie tells Sybil to put on her seatbelt, but Sybil, you know, she's immortal, so she's not going to worry about it. And you know, Bonnie's not going to choose Damon or Enzo. Sybil, again, surprised by when she actually cares about the both of them. And Bonnie just hits the brakes pretty hard, and Sybil goes flying from the car. So that was pretty cool. We had the fight start between Enzo and Damon, and Stefan's there. You know, he's trying to play Switzerland, as Bonnie calls him, or not Bonnie, as Enzo calls him. And Damon had actually called Stefan earlier to get him to you know, help with something, but it was actually to back him up. Because even though Damon's still under Sybil's control, he doesn't just want to go in there blind either. He wants more assurance that he's going to make it out. So Stefan, he's there, and he's not there for the reason Damon wants him to be. He's not just going to automatically try to kill Enzo too. He's playing Switzerland, as Damon says, being a little bit neutral, and he tries separating them. And between Enzo and Damon, it's a pretty even back and forth type of fight. Bonnie ends up showing up, of course, and she does end up choosing Enzo right when it looks like Damon's going to finally kill him or tear his heart out. And of course, Stefan, he had kept Enzo off of Damon a couple of times, because when it comes down to it, Stefan's going to do whatever it takes to save his brother. Even if he knows that Enzo is a little bit more capable of being saved at this point anyway. And we'll talk more about that in a couple minutes. And Bonnie makes this choice of Enzo, despite acknowledging that there's still probably part of Damon that can be salvaged. There's still probably part of Damon that can be saved. Because, as she says, Damon's just too stubborn to let Sybil just have complete 100% control over him forever. But once Bonnie actually chooses Enzo, Sybil pretty much gets it out there that she wasn't really going to go along with what Bonnie wanted. She had known that she'd make her own choice. So Sybil basically coaxes Enzo into turning off his humanity switch, finally letting go and finally let Sybil take, as far as we know, complete control over him. And Enzo does this as a way to try and get Bonnie out of that situation, seeing as the only way to not just have Bonnie killed outright, because Damon at that point was ordered to kill Bonnie again. And Damon chases after Bonnie, and Alaric ends up saving her, hitting Damon with his car. And he uses the fork, the artifact, to stun Sybil, and they actually end up capturing her, which is pretty surprising. I like Alaric's involvement there. And meanwhile, we see Georgie. She bears witness to all this. And she caught him pretty quickly that Alaric just wasn't going for a book deadline here, but she sees the whole fight outside the school and stuff. So I wonder how much more Georgie's going to get involved here. Of course, with that mark on her body and such. Then we have this conversation between Stefan and Bonnie as they're looking in on Sybil. Stefan, of course, admits that he was going to choose Damon if he actually had to, choose to kill one or the other. And you have to understand that Stefan's perspective on his brother. Of course he would choose Damon, even if there's like a little shred he believes he could still do. He'd still want to keep Damon alive for as long as he could. And Bonnie sort of scorns him for it, sort of slams him for it, saying, "Well, has Damon done?" Whereas on one hand Enzo has actually risked his life to give him any little piece to help him with Sybil, whereas Damon has sort of just given into it all, and Bonnie's very disappointed by that. I almost said Donnie for some reason. But I still think there's something of Damon hanging in there. I think it'll just take us a few more episodes to see it or something, perhaps later in the season. I do wonder how long they're going to drag this out, though. Now that dragging out sounds pretty harsh right now, it's not tiresome quite yet. But if it takes till like the very last episode or two for Damon to finally be brought out of it somehow, it'll feel a little bit stretched out, I feel like. But I don't see what else is going to bring Damon out of this completely besides Elena's return. And I don't expect that until the final episode. So it's going to be interesting to see how long they have this go on for. But it is interesting, and I am pretty entertained by it. And luckily it is only 16 episodes this season, so it can't be overly prolonged anyway. Of course, I had some notes here. Got turned to the side because I ran out of room. And we actually get a pretty good scene between Alaric and Stefan. They're actually sitting at the bar, at the grill, or anyway, or another place. I forget which one it was. But of course, they're not sitting as Damon and Alaric did. Alaric said Damon's the closest thing he ever had to a brother, and he acknowledges, like all the time, Stefan is able to pull Damon back from the brink of, or the edge. And Alaric thinks Stefan can do that again, so I liked Rick saying that. I like him showing that he still does care about Damon himself. Because I feel like we haven't gotten enough Alaric and Damon moments over the past few seasons. They had this great friendship that was one of the best parts of the show, and they haven't really done anything with it lately. So I'm glad they had this scene here of Alaric talking about that. Of course, Stefan doesn't really have much hope left though, but at the same time, Alaric gives Stefan his blessing about his marriage to Caroline, telling him congratulations and such. Again, Facebook being open, the little pop-up comes up on the side no matter what tab you're on. Anyway. Then we have Damon. He's laying in the road again. A car pulls up to him to check on him, and it's Tyler Lockwood. And Damon decides to go after Tyler because if he does this, as Sybil wants, people are going to lose their last bit of faith in him, and the last bit of faith that he will actually be saved somehow. Tyler tries to talk him out of it, telling him like, what life does he want after all this? If he does this, he's going to be throwing it all away, basically. And Tyler, he looks good. He has a little bit of a more facial hair going on, which I think is a good look for Trevino. But Damon, he does turn around. He ends up biting Tyler. Sort of getting into his neck quite a bit. We don't know if Tyler's dead. It did cut off before we seen like 100% for sure. But Damon was getting into his neck quite a bit, and I don't know who would just magically show up out of nowhere there. But it does cut off, so there's maybe a chance that someone will interfere at the start of the next episode, or there's something we haven't seen happen in that scene quite yet, or something, I don't know. But I think Damon could have sent a stronger message other than killing Tyler. I mean, I know Caroline cares about Tyler, but who else really does? I don't know. I don't think killing Tyler is like the last straw for Damon, really, but I don't think they'd bring Tyler back just to kill him within a couple minutes of him showing up, but we'll see. Tyler's character I sort of have mixed feelings on. I did sort of like his development with his father early on in the show, but his whole grudge with Klaus ended up feeling very petty and pathetic, really, and I haven't really liked Tyler too much since, but I feel like they could get more use out of his character this season, but we'll see. But overall, I really like this episode. I really dug it. I think it's the best episode of the season so far, and it's showing that this season might actually end up being pretty good, besides the final episode, too. So yeah, I really like this one. I'm giving it an 8.6, 8.7 out of 10. Let me know what you guys thought about it. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, subscribe, and peace.